Hello, boys and girls. Welcome once again to Stories from Malawi. And you're with me, Uncle Chris. The title of our story today is Sokole Sokole. Sokole Sokole. Now, Yamiko was a young boy, just 10 years old, and in the village, he had been seeing all the men and the big boys going hunting. Uzimba, we call it. Uzimba. And they'll get along and take all the dogs and get their bows and arrows and clubs and spears and go into the bush, shouting, Sokole, Sokole, hey! Sokole, Sokole, hey! Sokole, Sokole, hey! And Yamiko could just sit there and watch them, wishing that one day he too would have his own bow and arrow and join in the Sokole Sokole. Then one day his uncle came to him and said, Look, Yamiko, I have prepared you your own bow and arrow. Really? Yes, here it is. And he gave him his wooden bow with a string strong enough but small enough for him to hold, and 5 arrows. Put them in a small quiver and gave them to Yamiko. Yamiko was ecstatic because he couldn't wait for the day of the hunting to come again. And as he slept that night, he all thought and dreamt of Sokole, Sokole, hey! Sokole, Sokole, hey! And then one day, he heard the men coming, and his uncle was among them. And as they drew towards his house, going in the direction of the bush out of the village, he heard them coming, shouting, Sokole, Sokole. And that was the way they invited people to go hunting, the men and the boys. It is called kumemeza. Kumemeza uzimba. Calling people to go hunting. And Yamiko went into the house, grabbed his bow and put it over his shoulder and his quiver with him. His quiver with him, and he joined in the Sokole Sokole group. But his uncle said, Yamiko, that's not why I gave it to you. I gave it to you so you could practice, so that when you grow old enough, you can join us. Yamiko wouldn't go back. He still followed his uncle and the rest of the group. His uncle turned again and said, Yamiko, go back. You're not old enough. The bush, the hunting is dangerous. Because there are wild animals there. But Yamiko trudged on, tagged on to his uncle and followed them. Now his uncle, he let him join them, constantly keeping an eye on Yamiko, making sure he was all right. And then soon enough, they went into the bush and the dogs started going this way and that way, this way and that way, this way and that way, scratching here, scratching there. That's how they do it. And sometimes they are just pretending to follow a wild animal. And then the men would come and see if there's anything there. There's nothing. And then suddenly, they heard from one of the men, Uya, 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 meaning there was one animal. They must go and rush after it to kill it for food. And then as the men went in that direction, another one said, Hey, Iyo, iyo, iyo. That was another one. So two animals, one in this direction, another in that direction. And Yamiko didn't know where to go. He just followed his uncle, and then his uncle had gone a little bit further. Then he turned. As he turned, the man on that side saw this slightly bigger animal coming towards them. It was a warthog. Do you know what a warthog is? It is big, it is wild, it is dangerous, and it is aggressive. And it was coming in their direction. One big man there, and Yamiko just beside him. The man shouted, "Yamiko, shoot it!" Yamiko pulled out his bow, put his arrow, and he shot. He missed because the arrow just fell nearby. He hadn't really learned how to shoot. He was afraid. He ran towards the man and grabbed him in fear. The man said, "Shoot!" And so Yamiko put a second arrow and put it there. And this time, all his energy and strength was mastered into his hand. And he pulled, thinking that he might miss again. But when he released, he shot, and it pricked right into the heart of the hog. And the hog fell down. And the man shouted, "Sokole, Sokole!" And you don't know how Yamiko, how ecstatic he was. He said, "Yes!" And the man came. Yamiko had just mastered the art of hunting, and had killed a hog. Boys and girls, in the Bible, Psalm 127 verse 4, it says, "As arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are children of your youth." What the Bible is saying is that children are like the arrows of a warrior. You are the arrows of a warrior. God relies on you. You are the arrows that can pierce the devil and his angels in this battle of right and wrong. So, until next time, when I shall come again with another story from Malawi, it's me, Uncle Chris, saying bye-bye.